It's going to be the webinar about debugging. The software actually I'm using is called OBS. This is the first time for me with this stuff. It's supposed to be better than the usual Hangout. So you're supposed to see my screen now, my code, and my face at the same time. This is how you see it, right? And you will see my mug. You see how beautiful it is with the cactus? So we're going to talk about debugging and unit testing, and we'll compare them. Actually, I will try to prove, not to prove, but I will demonstrate how I use unit testing and how it helps me to find bugs. And we're gonna find one real bug in the production piece of software and in the open source library, which is called Cactus. So let's just do the live coding. We'll have just 1 hour or so, and we'll see how it goes. So I have a unit test. Let's start. This is production. This is the commercial project, not an open source one. So this unit test is a test from a commercial software, and I'm trying to run it, and it is using Cactus, the snapshot version of Cactus. So I am running it. Oops. It's something which doesn't compile. So let's do it again. So I have this simple unit test, and it runs. What it does, it's the class is called roles. So it's trying to. This is Xerocracy software, actually, by the way. So it's I'm showing you the internals of the Xerocracy software, and what this code is trying to do. This class called roles. It fails here on this line. So it tries to open the document, the XML document, and to open that XML document, it uses another XML decorator, which when the document is open, then before returning the content of that XML document, it sends it through the strict XML is the decorator which compares the XML content with the XSD schema. So it makes sure that the actual document complies to the schema. What happens here is that it says, the exception I'm getting here, it says something is wrong with this file. So this is the XSD, that's a schema. It says line 14, column 80, XML document structures must start and end with the same entity. That's something weird, because if I click on that thing, look, and I go to, so it's a perfect XSD document. It's quite good. There's nothing wrong in it. So if I see the source, then it's perfect. So there's nothing wrong in line 14. Look, it complains about line 14. So something goes really. I had this. I'm showing you the real bug, which I hit about 3 weeks ago, and I spent like a few hours to figure out what's going on. So it complains about line 14. It says that in the column 80, the document ends. So it looks like it doesn't see the rest of the document. It just sees the first, this first portion of it. That's really weird. So we need to debug it somehow. We need to fix it. I hit that problem like 3 weeks ago, and I was really puzzled. So I look at it and I say, okay, so I'm trying to. It looks like this strict XML is trying to load the file, this XSD, but for some reason it's no good. So we can debug, but instead of debugging, I will try to go in the unit testing approach. So what happens here? There are two components. The first one is the original XML document in this decorator. And the second one is the resolver. So this is this class is the one who is here, this one. It's a resolver. It's the one for, it's from Java. This class is not mine. This interface is not mine. So that's a resolver which returns dependencies or resources. They call resources when they're needed. So when the XML is open, then the XML contains a link to the XSD document, and then this XSD document has to be resolved somehow and returned. So we're doing it here. It's quite primitive approach. So we're just loading it using Cactus. This is the piece of code which actually loads that stuff, and using cactus, and returns it back. So something is wrong here, most probably. That was my guess. So looks like we're loading that XSD document in the wrong way. So looks like it's for some reason something is coming back to us in the wrong format. Maybe some encryption is broken. Maybe some compression is broken, because it's obviously something wrong in the input-output. That's what I figured. So my first question is, how can I make sure this one works? I cannot make sure. This is the static, this is a private, actually this code is mine, but this is private static method. And that's something which you cannot unit test. That's the evil component in all, in all code. If it's private static, there's no unit, well, unit testing is very difficult or impossible. So my first step, okay, let's make it easier. Let's extract that stuff into a class. Let's turn this resolver into a class, and then let's create a unit test for this class, because now this code is completely this is a this is some mystery in here. We don't know what's going on. We don't have a unit test for it. So let's extract it. So I just did that, not to waste your time. So instead of having that, we just deleted here, and I created a simple class called the XSD resolver. It's doing exactly like the thing we saw before, but now it's a separate class. So here, instead of calling this one, I would say I would make it static, because it has to be one resolver forever. So let's make it static then. XSD resolver is the one who is responsible for, let's see the interface again. This is the guy. So we put it here. Let's call it resolver, and the new XSD resolver. So it's static. It's going to stay here forever. It's kind of a singleton, but it's private, so it's more or less okay to have that. Not perfect, but still all right. That's the best Java can give us. And here we're saying this one resolver, this one resolver, and here. So it was used in 3 places. Now it compiles. This class is perfectly fine. Let's go back to that XSD resolver. Again, it looks okay. And let's see the unit test. There's no unit test, so let's write one. We need to do something like this: XSD resolver, resolve, resource, type, namespace. It doesn't really matter, I guess. What matters among these 5 parameters is the let's see which one matters. It actually loads the parameter number 4. See, so the parameter number 4 has to be the URL. So 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we have to put the URL. So let's put that URL, which is in trouble. Here, let's see. Which one was in trouble? This one. We're actually not making now a proper unit test, because we're gonna hit the real internet, but still it has to resolve, and then we're saying get string data here, and let's match it. Let's see what's there, because it was something wrong. I don't want to debug it. I don't want to run it step by step. I want to write a unit test and say that matchers, for example, ends with, so what is it supposed to end? So let's check it again. It's supposed to end with this, right? That's the head. That's the end of the file. So let's put it here then. Boom. This is the unit test, right? So if it breaks now, that's a success for us. So if the unit test will fail, that will tell us that we found the problem. And that's great. Let's see what the problem is. Let's run it and see what happens. Boom. That's something completely different. Let's see. It says array index out of bound exception number 4 here. Okay, they're not enough. Locator split. Oh, wait a second. Let's make the code a little bit more readable. So what happens here is that there's 5 parameters coming in, and then we're defining the locator. The locator is okay. Locator is the function. So this function is here. Apply. We format it all together, and then we split. Ah, okay. There have to be something there. They can't be empty. That's right. Okay, we can't just do it like this. We need some value, because otherwise it doesn't work. Let's run it again. Boom. Seems to be, it says a string ending with this was, yeah, it was this, actually it was like that. So it is okay. Look, the test passes. So it looks okay now, which is not, I mean, we failed. We don't know what's going on because it actually returns the correct XSD document. Maybe we didn't test it enough, so I keep trying. I don't know what's going on, so I keep trying. There are 2 methods. What I'm going to do now, let me show you. So in this class, in this interface actually, which is which this resolve resource is returning, so it's returning ls input. So ls input contains a number of methods, and we were just using getString data. But maybe we don't know what this XML internal data system is, the internal XML engine is using inside Java. Maybe they're not using getString data. Maybe they're using getByteStream. So that's a weird design again. Like, God bless Java, but they made this really weird design. So they return you something which has a number of methods. Like, look, they return you an object which has 1, 2, and 3 different methods, how you can read the content from there. So who made that design? I don't know, but that's really wrong. I'm sure you understand why. There has to be just one method, and then if you want to present it in different, like, look, here they return the reader, here they return the input stream, and then here they return the stream. So obviously that's a completely wrong idea. So you have to be, if you design things like that, you just return an input stream, and then if you want people to have more flexibility of what they really want, then you create decorators or some other classes which will turn input stream into what they want, into reader, into string, whatever. So the problem is that here we just tested getString data. So maybe the XML, this XML engine is using something else, and then the error is somewhere else. Okay, let's create another unit test. Let's try get input stream. What else did we get? Get byte stream. Okay, not input stream, byte stream. And now we want to convert this byte stream to the string. We can use input as input stream as input. That's the class from Cactus, which will make it easier for us to convert bytes as text, I guess. And then we provide the input in there, and we have a text which we can do like that, and then compare results basic XSD as byte stream. Not input stream, but byte stream. Okay, let's try again. Exactly the same file. If it crashes, we're lucky. It doesn't crash. We're not lucky, so something is wrong. Maybe it's not the byte stream, but maybe it's a character stream. But let me check, because it's weird. It definitely have to be either this one or that one. This is get byte stream. This is get stream. So why do we fail in here? So why do we fail when we let me see. So what happens here is this one. So we're using URL as input, and then input as ls input, and then we hit the one. Now that's interesting. So we need one more test. Well, I know that the bug is in here, but we need to catch it on this level. We need to reproduce it here. We need to see that we are actually in trouble. Well, let's create a third one. Maybe there's something wrong. I don't think so. Anyway, every unit test we create, it's only for good because it stays with the code. And even if we don't manage to, this one returns the reader. So I think reader as input stream, no. How can we convert a reader to the input stream? I guess maybe this one. Is it a input stream reader? No, it's the other way around. So to convert OK, then we need this one. Now we need the reader to input stream. See how to convert reader to input stream? I don't know that. Stack Overflow is going to help. Reader input stream. There you go. Oh, see? No, there's something wrong with the characters, with the encoding, I guess. Standards. Yes, this one. Okay, we're good. Let's try that one. Again, if we fail, then we're lucky, but maybe it's not going to happen. Okay. Well, we didn't fail. We have we created 3 tests. All of them pass. All of them are okay. It doesn't help us at all to move forward. Well, it helped us a little bit. We already did a refactoring, but we still don't know why this one fails. So let's get back and let's run this one. This one definitely fails. So, funny. So what happens here in this code, we used exactly the same resolver. And that resolver, for some reason, returns for this URL. It returns something which is not good for the the XML validation. This validate function, this validate method is comparing the XML with the XSD. I was sure that I know. Well, let's see, there's null, system ID. Okay, well, all right, let's create a test for just this piece. Maybe it will help us as well. So let's do this. Another one. Let's see how this resolver behaves in a more real situation. Works with XML document. Let's create something more realistic, which is close to the code we have here. This is the code we have. Let's copy it here. And this code definitely failed. We know that for sure. So we create XML document. Let's create something simple. Roles. It's an empty document. And then we have the... no, maybe the roles will not be enough because there has to be a link to the XSD. So let's find... I had this code somewhere. Yeah, there you go. So we need something like that. We need this stuff. Here, so just roles is not enough. So let's create a proper XML document here, which will look like roles. This one. Let's make it nice. So it doesn't look too big. Yeah, I don't like string concatenation, that's why I'm always using something. I'm always trying to use this. GitHub, whatever, yeah, we better use this one. Okay, like this, like that, and we close it. Types, okay, let's put roles. PM, HR, roles, let's hope it exists. Let's double check. Yes, it does exist. That should be enough. And here we use new accessd resolver. And that's enough. XML. Well, let's put it into the matcher assert. Dot toString ends with maybe like that. So it should work. It should load this document now and validate it through the resolver and crash. If it doesn't crash, I would be very surprised. Okay. Updated. So I need some details. But it didn't crash, to be honest. So it did load the. It loaded the file. That's funny. I need to put some date in here. Updated and version, because it complains about that. Let's put 2017 07. Today is 12. Just some date. Let's run it again. Okay, date is not valid. It didn't crash. That's really weird something. Okay, I'm sure you're not bored yet, but this is a problem. Okay, well, we have more tests. Look, we are just trying to. No, we're not debugging. Maybe that's actually a good illustration to my point, because we're not debugging, but we're the size of our test base is growing. So we have more and more unit tests. We already have 4. And we're not lucky enough to be able to reproduce the actual trouble. So let's get back to the actual trouble. So we fail here. This unit test fails. It doesn't work. And it doesn't work in this particular point. So this code, this transform, yeah. Types. Yeah, so this one crashes at this line. It actually crashes now on a different line. It was a different line before, if I remember it correctly. So we are not able to load that. I mean, now I'm thinking how to reproduce the bug. The bug is obvious. Something is wrong with this file. We cannot load it, but I have no idea how to reproduce it because we just did exactly the same. Well, okay, I didn't do exactly the same, but let me do exactly the same. This is the code where we crashed. This one, exactly this one. Okay, let's try that one here. That's our test. Let's create another one. We're just making more and more tests. Works with XSL document, XSL transformation. Okay, what happens there is this. I'm copying that. This is what happens. XML compress with version transform new XML document. Yeah, that will be difficult to build the test because we will need to use this one, or maybe not actually. Yeah, what does it transform here? There's a node is coming from what? All right. So we copy this one. Okay. This is the before. So it was like that before, and then we create the after. And here, this compress, okay, let's copy it. This is the one. Just for the test. We copy, because it's private, I cannot just refer it here, but I can make a new one. And then I say with version, it doesn't matter, 1, 2, 3. And then I say transform, and this is before. Okay, so this code crashes there. And we want to see it fail here again. We can put it this after should work, so we just take it from here and put it here. Like that. Okay, let's try. I'm running it again. Jesus Christ. I don't know, that's weird. I thought that we would fail here. I mean, so we have so many tests now. Let's run it again. Here, this code fails. Why? We're using exactly the same resolver. Are we sure? Resolver, XSD resolver. This is the resolver. Okay, let's do bum bum bum. Is it the right class? Is it the resolver? Is it ours? Yes. It's my class. That's the URL. Because this one was supposed to crash. I mean, it's obvious because it's definitely there's a bug, and I know where is the bug. So how come it works? Yeah, this one is the interface. Maybe you have some ideas. Let me check our chat. Compress might make the difference. No, the real trouble, I don't understand. Maybe it will be later, but well, we are supposed to be. That was the point of this webinar. That in one of these tests, we should be able to reproduce the bug, and then go deeper into the framework, because the actual bug is inside this method. So here, the URL. Inside this class, we have a bug. So we are supposed to reproduce it on the level in this project. Our test should fail, and then we go deeper in there. You know what? I have a suspicion. So let's take a look. Maybe what happens here is that maybe it crashes on the second attempt, because here, yeah, that's my suspicion. So let's try this one. Let's try to do it this way. Maybe this is just what I suspect. So we have a resolver, and then I use the resolver. And then let's try it again with exactly the same resolver. Do this operation again. So it seems that was the issue. No. So it loads it second time exactly the same as the first one. Can I do get string data again? Because what is different from the actual situation and our test is that in the real life they're making multiple calls to the resolver, because they need many XSD files, not just one. So in order to resolve one XML document, they need to load many XSD pieces. In the test, we just load the one piece, and maybe that's why the test doesn't crash. While but no, we actually did a full validation in the test. We did like here, it's a complete, everything here. So we validate the document. So it has to go to multiple places and validate it. Boom, boom, boom. Let me get back that code, the original version. I'm thinking now. I'm thinking. Okay, let's do it again. Sometimes it helps. Just run it again. And it crashes. And I click here. And it happens right here. Maybe that thing's now. So I'm thinking how to reproduce it. That's the point. So we need to be able to make the scope of the problem smaller. Because right now it's not clear what's going on. So why we fail with one exactly like with this document. And it's too big. The scope of a problem is too big. So we need to like jump in and debug, which is what I'm fighting against. And in order to not to debug, we need to be able to narrow down the scope. We tried that, but we didn't manage to reproduce the bug. So we took the piece from here, and then we created a unit test, which does exactly this, and the unit test doesn't work. And let's check maybe and see it happens here in the modify. What if I put this validation before? Just for fun, just wanna. So I see the bug right there too. That will help me somehow. No, it's only not transform. Okay, let's not wait and think. Well, that will be difficult for me to prove my point because it did fail for me before. But anyway, so anyway, I'll show you what happens in the framework. So let's let's assume that we actually managed to reproduce the bug in here. I don't know exactly what happened. I'll do it later. Maybe I'll publish my solution. So let's assume, because that's what it should be. Maybe we'll need more investigation here. We don't have enough time. So this test must break because the bug is in here. I know about that. So and when we go to the framework, let's go to the Cactus framework and see what we have in there. So we have this class which is called, let's look. This is the class we're using here. It's in the resolve resource. The class is called input s ls input. So this one, supposedly, if we would be able to reproduce it, would have a problem. So let's go to the Cactus framework. The class is coming from this framework, and this is the class. And the bug is in this method. So this one should crash. So it shouldn't work because there is a bug. I know about it. And let's see, do we have a unit test for it? Again, we're not going to debug it. We're gonna look at the unit test and then see whether the unit test actually tests that thing. And it doesn't. We don't have a unit test at all for this class, and that's a problem. So in order to fix that problem, we need to create a unit test for it. That's, again, we're not debugging. We're making a new unit test, and we call it input as ls input test. That's version 12. Input as ls input test. Let's say we should be able to read simple input. Can't read simple input. So here's how we do it. New input as ls input, and then we need to provide what? Look at the constructors. We provide just an input. So let's give it the text bytes as input. Hello. So this one should, well, input as ls input, and then we see get string data, and then we're saying we're using Hemcrest and with world. So this one should work. Well, should break, because we know there's a bug in there. We suspect. We don't know. We just suspect. It doesn't break because the bug does not manifest itself on a small content. So if the content is really small, then the bug does not show up. So that means that we just created a test. It didn't fail, but still we know that the bigger test, which was from the other project, was failing. I mean, it wasn't failing, but it should be failing. I'll find out later why it wasn't failing. So we create on reads bigger input. Let's put this one here, and let's use the URL from the project we have here. Let's use this one and see how it behaves. Again, I think that it should break. I believe. No, it doesn't break. Let's see. Input as ls string. That's the code. Input as bytes. This one doesn't fail. This one doesn't fail. I'm just trying to make the code the way it looked there. Funny, it doesn't break. What if I make some bigger content in here? Do we know some big content? Let's say, let's find some big text file. I don't know. This one. Just anything. Yeah, it's big, I guess. It's too big for our test. Let's get my blog post. Any blog post. This one. That's an HTML. So let's put it here. And it is supposed to finish with probably the same end. Now let's see how. Here. It is supposed to end with this. Now we're somewhere, so maybe it didn't read it. Yeah, finally, we did that. We're lucky. Okay, so let's see. Maybe that will be possible to do the same in the previous project here. So let's try bigger content. Let's try my blog post in here and see what it ends with. There you go. Let's see what we have in here. That's right. Okay, we finally managed to reproduce the problem. So I don't know exactly why we're not able to do it, with this code before, but it looks like we managed to do it. So if the file is big, if the content is big, then it crashes. So this one, for some reason, it may be unpredictable. For some reason, it crashes on the big content. So if the content is small, if these XSD files were quite small, everything was good. If the content is big, if it's big enough, then this test crashes, and we can go to the down. I mean, we can go even to a smaller scope, and then we're able to reproduce the bug. So here everything is clean when the content is simple. When the content is big, then we clearly cannot calculate the. Let's create another one. Let's say not just reads, but counts bytes in bigger input. Let's use the same URL, or we can try another one. Just for fun, let's do another title, something big. This one is quite large. Again, here you go. So we put the URL, and we don't need this sticky input. I was just trying. So you see, all I'm doing is I'm not debugging. I'm just trying to guess where the problem is. I never go down into the code. I never run it step by step. I never run into debug mode. I don't see the variables. All I'm doing is I'm just guessing what could be the problem. And every guess produces a new unit test method. That's the point. That's the idea. So I don't run the code I don't run it in order to see how it goes step by step. I don't never do that. All I'm doing is just breaking it down into smaller pieces, and I'm trying to unit test that smaller pieces. So it's guessing and making tests, guessing and making tests. So let's say we run this, and then we calculate the length of it. And the length should be equal to, I don't know, how do we calculate the length? I guess we can do probably, it's this, right? No. Probably it's not that. Yeah, let's say we have this is the size of the page, and we need exactly that here. So let's run it. Can't count bytes in a bigger input. Let's see how many bytes will come back. You see? So we're expecting 33 kilobytes, but only 13 kilobytes are coming back. That's the issue. That's the problem. Probably with smaller files it doesn't happen. With bigger files it does happen. So what do? So now we understand that we don't know what the problem is. We know that this guy is actually returning as something which is broken. So let's go into this guy and see what happens there in the method. So this is the method which returns, it does bytes as text and then input as bytes. So probably the bug is somewhere here, either in this class or either in that class. So now we need to unit test this one and then that one. So let's try bytes as text. Bytes as text. It's quite primitive. It's extremely primitive. It just encapsulates. It doesn't do anything, complex. So we probably expect the trouble in here. Yeah, there is some more code in here, and it's called input as bytes. So we go to the test, input as bytes here, and see whether this test actually is testing for larger input. You see, we have some 3 unit tests, but they all work with quite simple content. You see, hello something, and that's something else in here. So we never tested for large content. That's the problem. That's the main bug. So the bug is not the main bug is not in the code, but reads large content. Can we test? Can we read? Can't read large content from input? We say input bytes blah blah blah. Bytes as input. Input as bytes. Input as bytes. So we say new URL as input. Wait a second. How do we do it there? I want to reproduce exactly what we're doing in there, in this class. Input as bytes, and then there's some input in here. Okay, let's do URL as input. And we do exactly that. Exactly my blog post. Again, we can try another, but let's use this one. So we put this URL in here, and we say input as bytes, string, matchers, and with. Now let's better calculate the lengths. It's more visual. Equal to this number. Again, now we're testing a smaller. Now the scope of the problem is smaller. Now we're testing this guy, input as bytes. Let's run it and see what it says. See another number, 13208. Let's run again. Maybe it's going to be a different number. You see? Now it's 3549. So every time I run, it's a different number. You see? 13208. So every time it's a different bug. 9056. So every time it returns me a different amount of content. It's really difficult to understand. I mean, this bug is not so easy to catch, and debugging is definitely not the case for that. We need to reproduce it, and we need more tests. Okay, what do I do now? I don't know, input as bytes, so definitely this one crashes because this input as bytes. What it does, it calls as bytes. So what we can do is that we can input as bytes, and we're calling as bytes, so we can make it even simpler. Let's remove the string to make sure that we actually know the problem. So length, I mean, I'm trying to remove all the pieces which are not what we have here. URL as input. That's really simple. So all it does is just open stream. So definitely the bug is not here. So there's no point of testing this line at this point, because it does open the input. So something is coming back. So let's run it again. Yeah, boom, it's a different number every time. Every time it's a different number. So what's the problem? And now I click this input as bytes, and I say, okay, so look at this code. Look what's going on. That's the amount of code I need to look at and fix. That's the smallest piece of code I was able to get my problem down to. So we started from a really high level. Remember this XML, XSD manipulations, which are quite high level. Now we're down to this problem. I'm sure most of you already see what the problem is. So actually what this class is doing is just reading the input stream to the byte array. So what it does is just, this is the cycle. So first of all, it creates a byte array, then it creates a T input, which is the class which gets the source from here. When we read from T input, the source, they get bytes from the source, and then they save that bytes to the byte array. And we open that stream. And then we run the endless cycle. We create a small buffer with some number, with some size. I mean, there's going to be some temporary buffer in memory. And then we just call the stream, read something from the buffer. And then if the amount of bytes you got there is not equal to the size of the buffer, then most probably, not most probably, but definitely that's the end. So it was my code. So my assumption was that if you call read and the read returns something which is smaller than the length of the buffer, it means that you didn't return enough. And that actually is true in most cases. That means that there's nothing else to get. Actually, it is true if you create the test reads large in-memory content. If you create another test, can large content, can read large content from in-memory input. So here, instead of that, if I say How do I create a huge array of memory? I think it's arrays and how do I make a big, huge array in memory? Java create large array in memory. With data, I mean, I need some data there. How do I do that? Just for testing. No, I don't like that. I don't like that. I think we can use a string new, let's do it this way, bytes as input, and then we can use a huge large string. How would I do that? In Java, create large text for testing. Large file, large dummy file, blind text. Okay, let's use this one. Join, string, join, space, and new limited iterable, new endless. It's the classes from. So this is the endless iterable, so it's going to iterate hello dude. How many times? Endless iterable will return many. Limited iterable will do, let's say, 1,000 times. So this one will create hello dude 1,000 times, and then we're going to concatenate them all. So how many is going to be? So that's about like 10 characters, and that's 10,000 characters. That's maybe not enough. So let's make this one. So that's a pretty large text, and the size of that should be how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's going to be the size of that is going to be like this, right? So we're supposed to get 33,000. I mean bytes. If this input as bytes will read from the source. Let's run it, and I'm sure it's going to pass. 33999. Oh yeah, that's because of the spaces. So we have spaces between of them. So 33999. Okay, that's the number. So no matter how many times I run, it's going to be okay. 35, sorry. It's going to be every time the same number. Okay, let's make it even better so there will be no confusion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's exactly 10, and that's exactly 5,000. So it's going to be exactly 50,000, right? So it's easier to do the math. Let's run it. Everything is fine. So what's wrong with that? So why this huge content is okay and this content is not okay? What's the difference? Why this one sometimes fails, sometimes not, and this one always passes? That's the puzzle I had, and then I figured that then again we need to guess. We don't debug, we just guess. So we're just trying to reproduce the situation, which will perfectly, which will look. I mean, we need to reproduce the problem and make sure that the test is stable in reproducing it. So we need to. Well, this one is stable. But what's not good in here in this test, because is that it's not unit. It's not actually a unit test. It's a test which depends on the network. So this one is the URL from my blog. So if there is no network, the test is not going to pass, and there is definitely some external factor which makes this test unstable. So something which happens outside for some reason doesn't allow this small piece of code to work properly. And I'm sure you already know what it is. Let me look at your chat. In our chat, maybe you know the answer already. Yeah, there is no answer. So it looks like you don't know the answer. But if you know, tell me. It should be obvious. Well, the problem is that this line is wrong. So when I ask the input stream to give me, I give the buffer to the stream, and I ask the stream to read from the stream and put the data into the buffer, then it's not necessarily that the input stream will stop reading, will fill the entire buffer and then stop reading. In some cases, the input stream will actually stop reading before the buffer is full. That's how it's designed. I don't know why, but that's the internal design, most probably, of some input streams. I don't know. But that's definitely not a guarantee. That's what I figured. So this thing is not correct. So we need to stop reading only if the amount of bytes actually put into the buffer were less than 0. So that's the actual bug. So we created all that unit tests, all that test methods, just to catch that little bug. So instead of that, it should be this. And then all of a sudden, let's go back to here, run this one. That's the memory, and this one from my blog. It's good. It's good. It's good. So. But here it's not, we're not done yet. So just fixing that bug, we already found the bug. It became, when I was fixing that, it became obvious to me that this is a trouble and has to be fixed. But actually I found another problem in another place. But this one, look, it's not in the source code. This is a live bug right now in the framework. So I'm gonna fix it, and I'm gonna push all this stuff right after we finish the webinar. So that's a live bug in the framework right now. So the ideal scenario, we don't have time for that now, but the ideal solution would be to remove that, remove that dependency from here, remove that real URL, and create an input stream which will do what I just said. Let's try it. Maybe it will take just a few minutes. So input stream, let's say it's an input stream which is quite slow. Like this. Let's rewrite that method, which is actually called. So we call read buff, right? Okay, so it's final byte buff, right? It's wrong. Okay. We do this read. I guess that's the way this read must work, and no, it's not really true, but nobody's gonna use it anyway, so we don't need that method. Actually, we can do it better. For unsupported operation exception, they should not call it. Let's call it this way, because nobody should. It's not a good idea. Actually, this is we're kind of making an assumption of what's going to happen there, because in the future somebody may change the design. So that's not a good design. Okay, let me fix myself. Let's not make it that way. If final by int result is, if this one is less than 0, I guess the result should be -1. Else, I'm not sure. I'm not a really big expert in this input-output stuff in Java, but I guess that's how it should be. Okay, so the read one will try to fill the buffer. Not completely, not entirely. So it's not going to put everything into the buffer. What it's going to do, it will do this way. It will say return, let's do the content first here, final private int left. So it will say how much more bytes more bytes we still want to deliver. And here it's going to fill for int index 0 index less than buff length and index less than left. I guess I'm just improvising now. Now we say buff index equals to A. Can we do it? No, A, like that. Okay, and we return actually the amount of bytes we just put in there. So we need to make that index more visible, like that. So let's see, is it the right logic? Left is not qualified with this. Am I right? So every time they ask us for something, we're gonna fill the buffer entirely for as much as we can. So we're gonna fill that, and yeah, we're gonna do this left minus index. So we're gonna remove the amount of bytes from this left side. So in this case, let's create an input stream, new input stream as input, and slow. So here we most probably will read 10,000 characters, right? Because there are 10,000 here, so they're gonna call us a number of times, and we're gonna return them something, and then it's gonna be 10,000. Let's run. I'm not sure. Maybe there's some. See, it never stops. Java heap space. Yeah, it never stops. It never fails because at some point we need to return -1. So if the index is 0 here, it means that nothing else is left. Then we need to return -1. So if index is 0, so we gave you nothing, then the result is going to be -1. Else, no, that's stupid. So let's do it this way. Then the result is -1. There you go. So maybe if index, what's wrong here? Because of else. Yeah. Let's try again. See, all of a sudden it works. So it actually returns, let's run it again, just to make sure, it actually returns 10,000 lines. So we managed to create, but it's still not slow. So it's not slow because it fills the buffer entirely every time. So it does what this previous test is doing. Because everything is in memory, everything is fast, we do not manage to fail. So what we actually want to do, we want to reproduce the slow behavior of the data coming from the source, from the real source, from the network. How to reproduce that? We must not fill the buffer entirely. So here, if index left, then left, if buffer if it's less than buffer length -1. Let's put it this way. So we're going to fill the buffer, not entirely, but less than 1 byte. So it's going to be always 1 byte, not filled entirely. And let's see what's going to happen now. Boom! It's 0. Jesus. Wait a second. -1. Do I need to do this? No, I don't think so. So why is 0? If buffer is less than if index, so we're going to give them something. Or maybe this one is called. I don't think so. Nobody's supposed to touch that one. Yeah. Who's doing that? Uh, what? Why this? Okay, this t input stream read. Ah, I get it. Okay, so we need one more thing to do. It's not enough for the test. So this method is okay, but there's another one which is this one. We need to implement it as well. Final int start, if I understand, offset. Final int length. And this one should call, I guess it should be here, and this one should return this read buff 0 buff length right there. Okay, so that's the right design. So again, that's a really terrible, horrible design of the input stream. I wrote a blog post about that it should be done differently, but that's the way it is. So there are 3 methods which are supposed to call each other in the default implementation of the input stream, which surprisingly is not an interface, it is a class. So in order to implement your own input stream, you need to define 3 methods, 1, 2, 3, in order to this stuff to work correctly. So here we say buff, the offset is offset, the length is length. Actually, it's not going to be, these two things will not be used, so we can just assume that it's going to work like that. Again, that's for the purpose of this testing. And now let's say -1 here. Again, let's not fill the buffer entirely. Let's just fill almost entirely. And let's see what the number is going to be. The number is maybe, let's do not 2, but let's do 5. It also works. Oh, that's weird. How come? Oh, there you go. The buffer is too big, too small. So we're here the number is too small. It's 10,000, but the actual, because the left is just 10,000, but the buffer is going to be 16,000. So we need to make way more. So we need, let's make it this one. Int size, let's put 100,000. I think we can do it this way. Yeah. So that's the size. We start with 10,000, and then it's going to be size here. Let's run it again, 10,000. Will it work? Yeah, it works. 10,000 is all right. So now let's fill it, not entirely, but leave 1 byte untouched. Jesus Christ, again. So we need to make that buffer so when they come in here, they are but wait a minute, we fixed that. Yeah, that's right, we fixed the bug. Of course. That's why it works. So let's revert it, because now the bug is fixed. Of course it's going to work. So let's revert it back. So that's how it was before. And now we go back to the test, and let's give it not the entire buffer, but 1 byte left. And let's run it, oh wait, let's run it without that first. It works, and then without 1 byte, and it should crash. Yes, it does. Look, and now it crashes. That's what I wanted to prove. So now we don't want anymore the network, something from the network. It crashes with the slow byte. So what happens here actually is that on the first attempt, when there is an attempt to read 16,000 bytes, we return 16 kilobytes minus 1 byte, and the code here understands that this is the end of the story, because the buffer was not filled entirely, because we did not return the complete buffer. That's wrong. It's not how it should be. So if it's less than 0, that means that we are done. Let's run it again, and now the test passes. So now we're done. So now this test works. Now we can go back to these guys and run them all. because we fixed the final one. But let's run them all. This one doesn't work because it ends with something else. It ends with can't count bytes. Let's fix that. This one probably a different number here. Let's run it. Let's run it again. It's exactly the same number all the time. That's what we wanted to prove. Let's run this one. Maybe it ends with something else. Not the... Yeah, there's a end of line, I guess. Let's try. There you go, it works. So now it's stable. Even though it is connected to the network, which is not a good sign. So this one should be fixed. I mean, I'm not going to commit it to repository with this, because that's definitely a dependency. It's not good for the unit test. So I will use that slow input stream, which we just created, for this case and for that one. So I will just make it a test dependency, I mean a test object, test class, and I will put it in here. So now everything is clean, and I can go here and I can build this Cactus snapshot version. If it builds now, I can build it now, and then I will go back to the main project where we started, and then that's where I can run that test over there, and everything will be clean and everything will be complete. Well, now my static analysis is complaining. I'm not gonna fix it now, not to hold you any longer. So I just want to finish and demonstrate that now the whole thing works. So that's my point. So we started from a big problem, and we didn't know what's going on, and we get down to the smaller and smaller and smaller piece, and then we fix that smaller piece, and now we can go back, and our big problem when we started from is gonna just pass. Let's try this one first. That has to be this one. Now, well, yes, no, what's going on here? Has to pass. Let's try that one. The one, yeah, you see the one we started from, the one that the unit test which failed originally, which didn't work originally. Now it does work. So we just I don't know why this one particular unit test worked. I'll figure out it later. But that's the whole picture. So we started with something really big. You see, there's no input, output, nothing. There's really this code is really far away from the actual problem we solved. We started from here, we went down to the smaller component, then we fixed it there, and the whole line of unit tests will just work. What we did, we improved the entire code base. We didn't do any one line of debugging. I didn't debug at all. So in my real coding every day, I don't debug at all. I don't know how to do it actually. I never touched the debug button in my IDE, in the IntelliJ. All I'm doing is just creating unit tests. Again and again, multiple unit tests. That's all I'm doing. I never debug, I never see how the code works inside. If I don't trust my code, if I don't trust that the code actually works, I just create a new unit test. That's all. Yeah, so thanks for your comments. Yeah, exactly. What could possibly go wrong? So I wasn't expecting that, terrible live coding, but that's my first experience. I'm sorry for taking you that long. It took way longer than we were planning. But anyway, we don't have any time for questions. Just thank you guys, and it's gonna be recorded. See you next time, next month, the first Wednesday of the month at 11 a.m. 11 in the morning Pacific time in California. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Let me turn it off.